watching Moms Matter, and today we're going to talk about how pain transforms you with one of the most prominent rabbis in Los Angeles, Rabbi Steve Leder. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I went through your book in a day. I mean, honestly, it is such a beautiful read, so candid, so powerful. I mean, really, so touching.
Thank you. Yeah. The hope was to write a book that helped people but didn't read like a self-help book, something more lyrical and literary. And I think that's been accomplished. I'm very proud of it.
100%. I mean, I really recommend it to everyone who's watching. Everyone out there should pick up this book. What I really wanted to focus on with you today is about how you talk about what your congregants come to you and they say to you, Rabbi Leder, what do we do when we watch a friend going through chemo or divorce or on and on and on? There's so many things. And really, we feel handicapped.
Yes. Very often I get phone calls that go something like, Rabbi, my best friend was just diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. I'm flying back to New York to visit him. What do I say? And the first thing I tell people is that what you say is not nearly as important as just showing up. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I often, standing in the hallway outside a hospital room, don't know what I'm going to say when I walk in the room. I just know I need to show up. I need to walk in that room, because the most terrible part of pain is the way in which it makes the person who's suffering feel so isolated and alone. And merely walking in that door pierces that sense of abandonment and isolation. That's number one. Number two, what you don't say is far more important than what you do say. So I always tell people, and I write about this in the book, never say these 7 words to a person who's in pain, whether physical or emotional. Never say, let me know if you need anything.
Which is what we always say.
Most people say it. Some people, when they say it, actually mean it. Other people hope that the person won't actually ask. But whether you mean it or not, saying to someone who's suffering, let me know if you need anything, places the burden upon the shoulders of the person who's suffering.
Absolutely.
And they're carrying enough.
That's right.
So our job as people who love and people who care for others who are suffering is not to ask them to let us know what they need. It's to figure out what they need and give it. Don't wait to be asked. Just imagine if you were in the same circumstance, what would help you, and do it.
Just do it.
Play dates for the kids, help with carpool, going to the doctor's visits to take notes, send a massage therapist to the house, send a hot meal to the house a couple times a week. Just send a card, an email, and a phone call. Figure something out and do it. Don't wait to be asked, because saying let me know if you need anything is really fake empathy.
100%.
It's kind of, kabuki empathy. So that's extremely important. And just show up, walk in the door, and the right thing will happen.
Yeah, just showing up. You're right. Showing up and actually doing something. And it makes a huge difference. And I think as parents, to show our children by example.
Oh, it's so important. And I'll tell you something. My father has Alzheimer's. He's been in a nursing home for 7 or 8 years now. He's not the person he was. And I go to visit. I fly back to Minnesota every couple of months. Why? I love my dad. But I also want my children to see what it means to do the right thing, because I know some of it is enlightened self-interest. Someday I'll be the one in the nursing home.
Sure.
And I want them to remember when my grandfather was in that circumstance, my father was a good son. My father is now in that circumstance. I'm going to be a good son and a good daughter. Our children don't always listen to us, but they're always watching.
They're always watching, and I think that's huge. And something else you talk about that I thought was so important in how we raise our kids today, you say that you never have forgotten where you come from.
Oh, yes. So important. One of the positive things about pain, and let's not kid ourselves, this book is called More Beautiful Than Before, How Suffering Transforms Us, but it is not an idealization or a glorification of pain. Pain is terrible.
It is terrible.
There's nothing else to be said of it than that. However, while nothing we learn from pain is really worth it, neither is it worth less. There is always something to be learned from pain. Pain is the great teacher. So one of the things pain teaches us, one of the great powerful things that pain does, is it deepens our sense of humility. It reminds us that we really are only human. It reminds us that we're vulnerable. And sometimes when we forget where we came from, our humble background, our circumstances, it can lead to a kind of arrogance or a kind of numbness to the pain of others. There's a piece in the book called Be Uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable is important because it creates empathy.
Yes.
If we're comfortable, I think it means we're doing something wrong.
Right, right. So stretch yourself out there, get out of your comfort zone.
And you know, the opposite is also true in terms of reaching out to people who are suffering. There's another piece in the book called The Prisoner Cannot Free Himself, which is about not so much, it's not at all about reaching out to the person who's suffering, it's the opposite. When you are the person who is suffering, do you have the humility and paradoxically the strength to reach out for help? Ask for help.
Well, that's huge, because I think as parents, we have a very hard time. And it takes a village, and you need to ask for help. And I love that chapter. I mean, I was in tears reading that chapter.
And people want to help. That's the thing. You know, a lot of people, the book was stimulated initially in my heart and soul because of a very serious spinal surgery that I went through after a car accident. And a lot of people since the book has come out have said to me, Steve, we didn't know. We would have shown up. We would have helped you. We didn't know.
Yeah.
And you know why they didn't know? Because I kept it to myself. Because I suffered alone in the dark on the opioids and depressed. And I didn't reach out for help beyond my very, very small and immediate family. And I learned something from that experience. Had I been willing to reach out, it would have been an easier go for me.
Oh, for sure. Of course. And you also say, which I found shocking, because I think you're one of the kindest people I know. I mean, you're the rabbi of one of the largest congregations in the city. You talk about how you actually, in the end, came out kinder.
Well, that's why I called the book More Beautiful Than Before, because, look, I wasn't a bad guy
No,
before
not even
I went
close.
through all of this. But I am a nicer, more empathetic person because of the physical suffering that I endured. I listen to people differently. I'm more patient. I'm more sensitive. There's a beautiful verse in the Bible, in the book of Deuteronomy, that says God places God's words upon our hearts. And the sages ask a question about that. 2,000 years ago, the sages asked, why does it say God places God's words upon our hearts and not in our hearts? Certainly God has the power to place God's words in our hearts. Why only upon our hearts? And the answer they give is that God places God's words upon our hearts. And it isn't until our hearts are broken that the words can enter. It's so beautiful.
It is so beautiful.
And so powerful. And so revealing of this paradoxical truth that I try to unfold and reveal in the book, which is that we're actually more whole when broken. There's a certain kind of wholeness that only comes from brokenness.
Wow. So true. Yeah, you say the light can't come through until there's a crack.
That's right.
Wow. I wish we had all day to sit here and speak to you. You
so
are
do
a
I.
wealth of knowledge, and your book, I mean, honestly, More Beautiful Than Before. Thank you for bringing this into the world to help all of us get through pain, because we all do suffer. We all go through pain. And I thank you for this.
Thank you.
Thank you for
appreciate
being
the
on our show
opportunity.
today.
It's my honor.
And everybody, go out and pick up a copy of More Beautiful Than Before. You're watching Moms Matter at Focus TV Network, and we just spoke with the wonderful Rabbi Steve Leder about how pain transforms us.